Literally just taken me about 2 hours to try and get ready because Missy here would not let me finish my makeup or do anything. So it's literally taken me 2 hours to get ready to film this video. I was meant to be filming 2 videos today, but I think I'm only going to be able to film this one because I film with natural lighting, so the lighting is about to go. It's about to be nighttime. That's how long it's taken me. So yeah, I thought for today's video I was gonna give you guys a little story time on my labour and delivery story. I haven't done this one yet for Leon, so if you guys want to know how that went, then it's completely different to this one, I can say that. So just let me know if you want to also know my full story with Leon. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So my due date with Avery was the 11th of December and she was born on the 12th. So I actually went into labour on the 11th at night time, but because it was really late by the time that I gave birth, then it was the 12th. So I had that morning when I was 40 weeks, I had like a revision where they just check everything's okay and that you can still go overtime and be okay still, if that makes sense. Like with Leon, I got until 42 weeks because everything was fine and he just wasn't ready to come yet. So I made it to 42 weeks with him, but with her on my 40th week review, like checkup. That morning I had actually lost my I think it's called a mucus plug, where it's kind of like a sign that labour is near. I didn't really think it was going to be that near, but yeah, I lost that on the Wednesday. Yeah, on the Wednesday morning. So when I went to the checkup, I told him, and he just said that it's fine and it's normal. That probably means that I will go into labour soon, especially with it being my second. So yeah, that happened, and then I went home, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then it was around about 7 o'clock at night. So yeah, that's 7 p.m. And I started to feel like a bit more contractions, and I had a few like contractions, but I knew they were Braxton Hicks. I knew they weren't proper contractions because you know what what contractions are. So yeah, I started to have quite a few like intense contractions, and then they'd stop. So it was like half an hour and then they'd stop, and then it was like 45 minutes and it would stop, and then it got to like 7 o'clock and it was starting to get a bit more regular and a bit more intense. So through one of these contractions, I felt like a tiny little gush of water, and I just remembered in that moment the feeling of how my waters were with Leon, and I knew that my waters were breaking. So I just said to Pablo that we needed to go because I was a bit afraid that it was going to all happen really, really quickly, because obviously it being my second, I wasn't sure how quick it was all going to go, because I was always told that with my second I had to be a bit more careful than with my first because it could go a lot quicker and it could just happen a lot more faster. So I preferred to stay it safe, and I went to the doctor's office. So yeah, I went into the hospital and I told him that I was having contractions and that I thought my water had broken because I wasn't quite sure because of the colour of it. So when I went in, I just told her that I didn't really know if the colour was what it was meant to be, because it wasn't like just water. So yeah, she took me in, she checked me, and she said that she wasn't quite sure if Avery had a poo inside, in like the sack. So that was the whole another story, like to do with labour, because if that does happen, then there can be a chance of infection. So when that happens and they see that happens, so when they see that that could be a possibility, that's when they decide to induce you or not. So because my waters hadn't all broke, like all of it, it was just a little bit, they decided to monitor me, to put me on the monitor and just wait for more water to come out just to check the colour of it. So I was sat on the monitors for about an hour, and then I got quite an intense contraction, and in that contraction, that was when my whole water broke, like broke. Um, so yeah, that was the. So when they saw the water that had come out, that's when they decided to go ahead and induce me, because it was a bit tinted, the colour, and that is when they can tell if she had done it in the sack. Obviously it's dangerous for her because she could get infection. So they decided to just speed up the process, and it was between two decisions. It was either if the water that was coming out was tinted, then they would take me straight to labour and delivery and just induce me. And if it wasn't, then they were just going to leave me in hospital, because they obviously couldn't send me home with my waters broken. And just wait for the process to speed up by itself. But they decided to induce me because it was a bit tinted, so they just preferred to play it safe just in case there was any infection. So they took me into labour and delivery, and I had a shower, and I just kind of relaxed a bit under the hot water, and my contractions by this time were quite strong. Like you could tell it was already going to be a quick process because of how quick my contractions were coming on by themselves. I hadn't had any sort of meds to speed anything up yet, so that was obviously going to be a quick process. So they decided to give me meds to speed the process up. I have no idea what it's called in English, but in Spanish it's called oxytocina, which is just meds to speed up your contractions and just get everything going a bit more quicker. So they gave me a dose of that, and then they kept turning it up and saying we're gonna keep turning it up until you get to a consistent contraction level thing, because obviously they were still not really you have to have them every 2 to 3 minutes apart, and mine weren't that apart yet. They were a bit up and down still. So they told me that they were gonna just turn it up until I got to a stable contraction, one after another after another after another. So they did that, and by this time it was probably about 11:30. Yeah, about 11:30, and I then decided that I wanted an epidural. With Leon, I had an epidural, and everything just went super smooth, and it didn't slow the process down either, because they do say the epidural slows the process down, but it didn't with me and Leon. So I decided that I wanted the epidural again because it was a bit unbearable at that time, and I knew that there was still a few hours to go. That's what I thought, because I hadn't really dilated much. I was at a 4 by then. So by the time that the anesthesiologist, I think, came in and she did my epidural, it was probably about 1:30, 1:45, something like that. And then by the time that it had made its effect, which it didn't, I'll explain that in a minute. But by the time that she'd come in and she'd put everything in its place and blah blah blah, it was about 1:30. So she was kind of a bit hesitant, which is what I don't like in doctors, is when they're hesitant, because I feel like they're the ones who should know what they're doing, and she just didn't really look like she knew exactly what she was doing. I mean, it's a dangerous process, because obviously an epidural can leave you paralysed in extreme cases, obviously not in everybody's case, and it hardly happens either. But it is something that can happen, and she said that she had the catheter in the this mini tube, and then she was like, I don't want to put a lot in because I want you to still feel your legs and the pressure and blah blah blah, but I don't want you to feel the contractions. So I was like, well, how's that gonna happen? So she was just fidgeting around, and probably that's why it didn't kick in when it should have, because she took so long. So by the time she'd gone, I was having quite a few contractions and they were still quite painful. So as soon as I had a very intense contraction, I felt the head, like literally. It's like a pressure as if you need to go to the toilet, which sounds a bit TMI, but and it like I just felt it, like I just felt her head just calm down. So I said to Pablo, I was like, you need to tell these doctors to get back in here because she's like here. So as soon as they saw that she was there, obviously there was no more time to sit and wait for the epidural, so they just took it out, and it had obviously done zero effect on me because it hadn't even been like 20 minutes. So they took the epidural off and out, and from there it was just everything was just so painful. um when I like felt her head, that was kind of when it started to get really, really intense, because obviously, if I don't know if you've seen like pictures that go around of like how you dilate and how big you have to go to dilate, and without any meds, that was ridiculously painful. So it was just, I just had to push. I had no choice. I just had to push and just hope for the best, because as soon as I felt it, her coming out, like the head, I knew there was like no going back, because you can't just shove her back in and do a C-section or wait for the epidural to kick in, or once she's there, she's there. There's like, it was intense. So from there on, it was just literally push, 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 and that was the only thing that I really could do. I screamed the hospital down. I know I did, because I can just remember myself thinking I'm going to die. And it was very intense, very intense. So, um, yeah, that was, it was, I mean, I'm glad that I've had like a natural labour and also an epidural labour, which was with Leon, because I have experienced both, the best of both worlds. But I would 100% go with an epidural. I worship the man or woman who invented the epidural, because they literally saved our asses when we have to give birth. So yeah, it was intense, but the recovery was a lot more better than with Leon, because obviously with Leon it was my first time. My body didn't know what it was going through, what it had to do. It had no idea whatsoever, neither did I. And I had more stitches I had about, I think there was like 10 stitches with Leon, and with her I only had one, which was apparently for aesthetic. But yeah, that was it. It was intense. So normally over here you have to stay in hospital for 48 hours after giving birth. So I shouldn't have really left until the Saturday morning. But I decided that I had her on the Thursday morning at 2:00 a.m. 2:16 a.m. So I was fine that whole day. I got up. I was fine. She was fine. So on the Friday, I decided to sign like it's like a form that you can leave the hospital, but if anything goes wrong, it's under your responsibility. They don't take themselves responsible for it, because you're leaving before they recommend you to. So I decided to sign it because I was driving myself insane in the hospital. I hate hospitals, hate them. So yeah, I decided to sign myself out of the hospital and come home, because I feel like there's nothing like comfort of your own home. So yeah, I signed myself home. So that is my labour and delivery story. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you guys have any sort of questions on anything like this, if you're new, or you're a new to be mom or secondary mom and you just want to ask, then make sure that you leave a question in the comments below. And if you haven't already, then make sure you follow me on my social media. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like and subscribe if you did, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.